We are continuing topic number 5, which are getting the understanding for us of the ethical issues of the abortion. And actually, let's talk about abortion in embryo and bioethical approach. The world of the science and the social conditions which we have right now still remains on the discussion, still remain on the division between the jurisdiction and on which abortion is legal and on which abortion is getting the ethical status, at least in the first trimester, and those in which it's prohibited or narrowly restricted in the future. The phenomenon of conscientious refusal by healthcare professionals is complicated by the variety of kinds of services that refusals can target and by how the phenomenon differs from paradigm cases of the conscientious objections. So, conscientious refusal, such a phenomenon, getting the provision of the status of the kind, status of the legal basis, and also the status of the natural status of the embryo. Depending on the kind of professional involved, doctor, nurse, or pharmacist, conscientious refusal that concerns abortion can be refusal to do the following. First, perform an abortion, yes, as the part of the social circumstances, the part which are getting the integration of both the status of the embryo and the status, the right which we have discussed at the previous hour conversation, the right of human, the autonomous right of human. And secondly, refer a patient to another professional for abortion, which gives the social description, the increasing of the levels of the abortion, because we, from the part of the doctors, from the part of the medical servants, will give the certain reference to patients to go to the professionals in the question of the abortions, and it will spread the activity, spread the term of the social encourage concerning the abortion, because we will give the professional advices on that. And also the third dilemma, the third question, that providing the information on abortion. We have discussed in the previous hour lecture and the question of the education, of the proper education which is supposed to be given by the society. The information itself as the one of the main sphere of the construction of the education supposed to be given on the abortion, related to actually the formation of such a status, at the legal part, and also the bioethical questions of the values. The information itself concerning the abortion, it's also the part of the conversations which we're going to talk, and also some of the social projects, they actually included the information on the abortion as the main part, as the main focus of the social projects which can be implemented in this field. And if we're talking about the professional level, we also supposed to mention the training to perform abortions and related procedures, because such a training is actually important for the practical cohesion, practical enforcement of the medical servants which are getting in the field of the abortions and related procedures. And of course, here, is it supposed to be supported by the state, or is it the case of the private medicine? For sure, here the status of the state, this means the dilemma which we have been discussed on the previous hour question, the ethical dilemmas of the state involvement in this question of the abortions, is getting the implementation, is getting the actual cases which will be given and supposed to be discussed by the professionals in the field. If we're talking about the data, the global data that the World Health Organization provide to us, it estimates that about half of the 40-50 million abortions that occur annually, are unsafe. This means getting the conditions which have not been provided by the situation, which have not been provided by the circumstances where the medical service provided according to the right and according to the legal status to protect, of course, life and to not harm the right of the women and the right of the fetus. That is done by persons who lack the necessary training and medical resources, and that's one of the reasons why the system of the state protection and the system of the state institutions supposed to have certain related educational procedure, certain related training procedure for upgrading the level of those who are providing the given procedure of the abortion in the case it's legal. Under these conditions, under the conditions which such a problem relates, it's important to examine carefully the arguments for and against the moral permissibility of abortion itself. Why we have for and against? Once more, here pro et contra coming from the Latin, and it's also coming to the educational sphere, because during pro et contra discussion, for and against discussion, we will face the actual cases, and we will see without any our personal prejudgment the role and the status of the parts, the role of and the status of the social indicators which have been related to the moral permissibility of abortion. The moral status of abortion, whether it's permissible or impermissible, is the primary determinant of the legal status it should have, and it should be given by the society with the help of the acts. The moral status of the abortion then transformed via educational system to the values which society has. Of course, the basement for such a moral status also have been given by the religious cases. And the theory itself provides to us the stages of the historical development on the views concerning the abortion, which will be the given material at our Moodle platform for additional material for this topic of our discussion concerning the abortion and reproductive technology. Pay attention to this. Pay attention to these stages of the understanding historical genesis point of view, which is connected with the abortion. We will concentrate on the legal status also during our practical classes, and it will be given as the example of different legal status coming from the different cases of different countries. And of course you will see that the influential part of this legal status were given by the religious and were given by the traditions which have been implemented by the centuries. And for sure, the construction of such values, construction of such legal status have been also transformed to the understanding of the abortion itself. Of course, not all morally objectionable actions should be legally banned. Some are too minor to justify legal coercion. That's we have been talking about, that the transformation from the moral values to the legal status, it's supposed to have a certain path to be given. And for some of the too minor questions of the abortions, the legal status have not been implemented, have not been legally coerced. But if abortion is the form of wrongful homicide, as many opponents believe, then it's too serious a moral wrong to be legally tolerated, legally not implemented to the acts of the state. which is supposed to protect, first of all, the life of the human being, as we have been mentioned, as it implemented to the state and international policy concerning this question. For sure, the wrongful homicide, it's also the contradiction with the terms which have been discussed beforehand, with the terms like an autonomous status of the women, the status for their birth. And of course here are opponents, that means pro et contra. We're still on this paradigm of the discussion, still on this paradigm of the educational procedure. The opponents supposed to be of the abortion supposed to be studied very deeply. What are their constructions? What are their integral parts of their point of view, and why this point of view have been implemented to the certain support from the society, to the certain support from the social status. And for sure, the tolerance from the legal part, the tolerance from the legal power and from the protection power of the state, supposed to be also discussed, supposed to be also under construction, under discussable phenomenon at the bioethical level. Conversely, if abortion is morally permissible, then the toll taken on women's lives and health by the lack of access to safe and legal abortion is extremely difficult to justify, because, as it was mentioned, a lot of abortion which have been given at the world have been given by not professionals in the field, and the lack to access to safe and legal abortion, it's also the question of the state policy, and also the question of the given permission by the society, given permission by also the social levels which have been implemented also by the bioethics to be given by to the status of the abortion. The first group of arguments, we are starting the discussion pro et contra, for and against. So the first group of arguments examines the consequences of denying women safe and effective means of controlling their fertility. The rest of the discourse, the rest of the co-partners of this discussion deal with the infringement of basic moral rights that these denials entails. The consensualist case for access to safe abortion must begin with the conditions that can make unwanted pregnancy difficult to avoid, and the consensualist case given also the form of the conditions which supposed to be given to make unwanted pregnancy difficult to avoid, and how the society is supposed to perform in these cases, how the society is supposed to be given the support for the women. That's also the question, that's also the vision, the construction of the abortion which have been discussed and understood by the future part of the social deliberation concerning this problem, social deliberation concerning the problem of the abortion. Many women experience unplanned pregnancies, and may they often judge it's necessary to end them. That's the question which have been raised and also have been implemented to the legal status of the pregnant woman. The need is so compelling that where abortion is illegal, many women risk criminal penalties while perceiving abortions, and death or permanent injury from clandestine surgical, pharmacological, or self-inducted abortion if it have been done, as it was mentioned by World Health Organization, by not professionals. And the cases of such a problem, the cases of such a medical injuries, it's also the reasons why the legal status of the abortions which have been provided by the society is supposed to be clearly understood by the means of the law, clearly understood by the means of the state policy. And of course there is the big field for the discussion itself, which is coming from the side of the society, from the side of the social movement, which support the status of the pregnant woman to have, if it's necessary, to end the pregnancy. And why important for the state? It's to show that the involvement to the social conditions and involvement to the legal acts supposed to be done by also the society, and the responsibility is supposed to be shared. The shared responsibility, because it's one of the parts of the legal-based society. Consciously, refusals in healthcare can go unnoticed not only by authorities but also by patients themselves, particularly if healthcare professionals are not clear about why they will not fulfill patients' requests. And also here we have the constructions of the problem on the way of the communication between patient, on the way to the communication between the pregnant women and the system of healthcare, system of the professionals, which can understand, which can finally come to the common decision on the way and supporting on the way of the patient's request. Or actually the opposition said that the medical healthcare system, medical service, supposed to provide the information and supposed to protect the right of the embryo, right of the fetus. These are some of the consequentialist arguments for access to safe abortion. Let's see them. Equally important are the rights-based arguments, which focus upon the encroachments upon women's freedom that are inherent in the prohibition or restriction of access to abortions. And for sure, the women's freedom, which we have discussed at the first hour question, here right now getting the discussional field here, getting the actually the practical field while we're talking about the abortion itself. The restriction or prohibition, the restriction or prohibition of access to abortion. So this means the state is supposed to give the certain conditions in which the women can make the certain decision and then to be supported by the state. Or in cases of the some countries, in cases of the third world countries, we are getting the question of the supporting from the international bodies for such a condition, for such an educational and practical part of the connection between the medical servant and the patients. Bioethicists are use cases at the opposite extreme, that is, refusals that almost anyone would consider morally abhorrent, to show that limits on conscientious refusal in healthcare are essential. And this question is supposed to be discussed, this question is supposed to be morally coincides by both society and the professionals and also the social movement which support women's right. Even when the refusals are based on sincere moral convictions which are coming from the status of the embryo and the actual vision of the abortion. Someone who believes that embryos and fetuses have that right is unlikely to be persuaded by either consequentialist or rights-based arguments. It is at best morally problematic deliberately to kill individuals who have a right to life, even to prevent very bad consequences or to protect others' basic moral rights while they're living. And here we're supposed to understand the conditions on which the deliberation is supposed to be done, because the deliberation procedure and deliberation concentration and the functional approach on the abortion, it's also the problem of the certain stage of the development of the society, certain stage of the development of the communication and the educational level itself. While some homicides may be justified, like those done in self-defense, no one is entitled to kill an innocent human being who has done nothing to waive or forfeit the right to life. And of course, the protection of the embryo, it's the part of the policy and the part of the social movement against the abortion, which have been supported by the religion. As I have been told you, a lot of theories which have been given in the other presentation provides the genesis of such a construction, the bioethical and the valuable phenomenon as the protection of the life of embryo and future newborn child to be given the birth. And the conclusions for our discussion is supposed to be given in the certain position of the further constructions of the point of view and educational phenomenon of the abortion. First of all, phenomenon of the continuous refusal by healthcare professional is complicated by the variety of kinds of services which have been given and supposed to be given to the pregnant woman in the form of the abortion. Secondly, it's important to examine carefully the arguments for and against, pro and contra, the moral permissibility of abortion on different countries. We're not supposed to have the principle of universalism in general while we are talking about the concrete status, concrete case. We're supposed to be partially oriented. But here, the educational phenomenon, while we are getting the discussion, we're supposed to make certain universal vision, certain universal point of view on this bioethical phenomenon, this dilemma of the ethical issue. Thirdly, almost anyone would consider morally abhorrent to show that limits on consensual refusal is given, is provided. So that is why the status of the society, the social status, the social movement on the supporting and against the abortion also have been given to the certain part of the educational process, have supposed to be introduced to the social discussion on the bioethical level and bioethical cohesion of the status of the abortion. So this discussable question is underlined by some practical classes, by practical cases which we're gonna discuss during the classes. Pay attention to the questions which have been raised during this presentation and questions which have been raised during the providing to you these cases. So follow the questionnaire and follow the platform of the Moodle. Thank you.